In one fleeting moment, a simple glance transformed our lives. I remember the silent spark between Jeff, the stoic museum guard, and Alfred, his reserved counterpart on duty, as if their eyes held the secret of a forbidden passion. That moment, charged with hidden desire and imminent danger, set off a chain of events that would unravel everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. I never imagined that my life would be swept up in a whirlwind of secret glances and clandestine meetings. My name is Crystal, and I have always lived a quiet, predictable life in the heart of the USA. I worked at a small community center, and my days were filled with routine and the occasional comforting chatter of friends. But all that changed when I met Jeff, a 63-year-old museum guard whose calm demeanor masked a turbulent inner life, and his coworker Alfred, whose quiet intensity spoke louder than any words ever could. It was a cool autumn evening when I first caught sight of them. I was walking home after a long day at work, the golden leaves crunching under my feet, when I passed by the museum. The building, with its grand facade and storied past, always held an air of mystery, but that night, its corridors whispered even darker secrets. There, near the entrance, I saw Jeff. His posture was straight, his eyes fixed on something far beyond the ordinary. And then, almost as if by destiny, I noticed Alfred, a man whose gentle eyes and subtle smile conveyed a world of hidden desires. Their glances met briefly, charged with an intensity that made my heart skip a beat. I found myself drawn to them, unable to shake the feeling that I was witnessing the beginning of something extraordinary. Jeff's eyes, usually calm and unyielding, now carried an unmistakable spark of passion whenever he glanced over at Alfred. And Alfred, with his quiet presence and deliberate movements, seemed to communicate silently with Jeff in ways that spoke of deep, unspoken longing. I began to see them every day, the way they exchanged knowing looks during their shifts, the small gestures that hinted at a connection that defied the strict rules of their work and the expectations of society. As days turned into weeks, the intensity of their secret bond grew more apparent. I would catch snippets of conversation, soft chuckles that barely reached their lips, and moments when time itself seemed to stand still. It was as if the museum's stone walls held their secrets, echoing the silent promises of forbidden desire. I knew that if anyone discovered the truth behind those glances, the consequences would be as dramatic as they were painful. I had always believed that passion belonged to the young, that my age or the predictability of my life had no room for the kind of wild, uncontrollable emotions I witnessed between them. Yet, I felt inexplicably drawn into their orbit. It was not just the allure of their secret meetings that captivated me, but the realization that love could be unpredictable and fierce, even when it came in forms that defied society's expectations. The first time I saw Jeff and Alfred alone together, the air between them was thick with tension. They stood in a quiet corner near a stack of ancient artifacts, their voices low and hushed, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile magic between them. I hid in the shadows, a silent observer to their private world. Jeff's eyes sparkled in the dim light, and Alfred's hand brushed against his arm in a fleeting gesture that spoke volumes. In that moment, I felt both the thrill of forbidden love and the heavy burden of a secret that could tear lives apart. There was a deep sadness in their expressions, a melancholy that hinted at lives constrained by duty and expectations. Jeff, a man of routine and responsibility, was caught in a web of desires that threatened to destroy the order of his life. Alfred, on the other hand, seemed to carry the weight of unfulfilled dreams and the courage to risk everything for a taste of freedom. And I, drawn inexplicably into their world, found myself questioning everything I had ever known about loyalty and love. Even as I struggled with my own feelings, the intensity of their bond forced me to confront a truth I had long ignored, that passion can strike at any age, shattering the illusions of normalcy and revealing the raw, untamed nature of desire. Their secret glances, their subtle touches, and the way they seemed to exist in a world of their own captured my imagination. I began to feel a surge of emotion, a mix of envy, admiration, and a bittersweet longing for a passion I thought was long lost in the passage of time. As the days grew colder and the museum's corridors darkened with the onset of winter, I realized that the secret bond between Jeff and Alfred was not just a fleeting infatuation. It was the spark of a revolution in their hearts, a silent rebellion against the constraints of a mundane existence. And in the quiet moments of my own life, I could not help but wonder if I, too, was ready to embrace the kind of passion that defies convention and lights a fire in even the coldest of hearts. Standing on the threshold of this forbidden world, I knew that the coming days would force us all to make choices that could not be undone. The glances, the stolen moments, and the unspoken promises had set the stage for a drama that was as beautiful as it was dangerous. I was about to step into a story of infidelity, desire, and the pursuit of a love that dared to defy the expectations of an entire lifetime, a story that began with a single, electrifying look. In the quiet hours of early morning, as I sipped my bitter coffee, I found myself lost in memories and questions that pulled me into the depths of this tangled affair. I had always believed that the past was like a locked room, one that should remain undisturbed. But secrets have a way of clawing their way out, and soon I began to uncover the hidden histories that bound Jeff, Alfred, and me in ways I never could have imagined. I, Crystal, had spent most of my life immersed in routines. Raised in a modest household in a small Midwestern town, I learned early that predictability was a form of safety. I had built my life around a steady job at the community center, tending to the needs of others and keeping my own desires carefully contained. Yet beneath this exterior of calm, there was a quiet yearning for something more, something that stirred in the shadows of forbidden dreams. When I first saw Jeff and Alfred exchanging those charged glances, I was captivated, not just by the promise of their passion, but also by the mystery of who they once were and what led them to this perilous juncture. Jeff, the museum guard whose life seemed so meticulously ordered, had a past that was as intriguing as it was painful. Behind his stern expression and measured steps was a man who had sacrificed much for duty. I learned from hushed whispers and careful observations that Jeff had once been deeply in love with a woman named Gladys. Gladys, with her kind eyes and gentle laughter, had represented everything conventional and expected in his life. Their marriage, arranged in the manner of a quiet partnership built on shared responsibilities, slowly morphed into a life of monotony. As the years passed, the spark that once ignited his heart began to fade, leaving behind only the routine of duty and the silent ache of what might have been. It was as if Jeff had locked away his true self, resigning to the notion that passion was a luxury reserved for another time, a time that had long since passed. Then there was Alfred, whose past was shrouded in even deeper mystery. A fellow security officer at the museum, Alfred exuded a quiet intensity that drew people in without a word. I learned bits and pieces about his earlier years from offhand comments and fleeting mentions in conversation. He had traveled far and wide, seeking a life unbound by the restrictions of his small-town upbringing. There were rumors of past loves and lost chances, of nights filled with wild abandon that gave way to mornings of regret. Yet, despite the fragments of his story that surfaced, Alfred seemed to have chosen a different path, one that led him to the museum, to a life where routine replaced risk, and where the promise of a secret passion still lingered in the darkened corridors of his heart. As I pieced together these hidden narratives, I began to see a reflection of my own struggles. In many ways, I had chosen a life of safety over passion, suppressing the fiery desires that whispered in my ear during lonely nights. It wasn't until that fateful evening at the museum when I witnessed Jeff and Alfred share that fleeting touch that I realized I could no longer hide behind the facade of normalcy. The discovery of their past pains and unrealized dreams stirred something deep within me, a longing for a life less ordinary, for an existence that was vibrant and true. Every day, as I walked past the museum, I felt as if I was being drawn into a secret play, one where every glance and every whispered word held a promise of something forbidden. I began to linger a little longer after my shifts at the community center, seeking solace in the silent drama unfolding before my eyes. I could see Jeff's eyes soften when he thought no one was watching, and Alfred's face light up with a secret joy that was both haunting and beautiful. Their mutual recognition of past disappointments and present desires created a bond that was palpable, one that made me question the very nature of loyalty and love. But with every revelation came a surge of conflict. I was not merely an onlooker. I was becoming an unwitting participant in their intricate dance of desire and duty. The more I learned about Jeff's life with Gladys and Alfred's hidden history of yearning for freedom, the more I found myself caught in a web of emotions that I had never anticipated. My heart battled between the safety of what was known and the exhilarating terror of embracing something wildly uncertain. It was a dichotomy of longing for stability while being irresistibly drawn to the unpredictable fire of passion. One chilly evening, after the museum had long been locked and the corridors silent, I overheard fragments of a conversation that hinted at the unspoken dreams of these two men. In a moment of vulnerability, Jeff murmured to Alfred about the weight of responsibilities and the regrets of lost opportunities. Alfred, in response, confessed that he had always believed that every person deserved a chance at genuine passion, even if it meant risking everything. Their words, laden with both sorrow and hope, reverberated within me, forcing me to confront the choices I had made in my own life. As the days passed, I found solace in the shared pain and longing of these broken souls. Their pasts, full of both beauty and regret, resonated with the parts of me I had long suppressed. And in the quiet moments of introspection, I began to imagine a future where love was not defined by the boundaries of age or convention, but by the depth of our shared human experience. Standing at this crossroads of unveiled pasts and emerging desires, I realized that every secret carries with it the potential for both destruction and redemption. And as I prepared to take another tentative step into the realm of forbidden passion, I knew that the choices we make in the shadows have a way of echoing in the brightest light of day. As the days turned into nights filled with restless longing, the delicate balance between our hidden lives began to unravel. I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions and secrets that deepened every moment of desire and every lie we told ourselves. The silent, almost forbidden connection between Jeff and Alfred had evolved into daring rendezvous, and I soon realized that the intensity of their passion was contagious, drawing me further into their dangerous orbit. It began with stolen moments behind the museum's locked doors. One evening, as twilight faded into darkness, I followed a faint echo of laughter and hushed whispers that led me to a secluded corner of the museum. There, amid rows of ancient relics and forgotten stories, I saw Jeff and Alfred together. Their eyes met with an intensity that made time stand still. Jeff's hand brushed gently against Alfred's, and in that subtle touch, I sensed an unspoken promise of more, a promise that defied the constraints of duty and morality. My heart pounded as I witnessed their passion, a passion that seemed to burn hotter than the cold stone around us. But it wasn't just the connection between them that stirred something deep inside me. As I lingered in the shadows, I felt an overwhelming pull toward the warmth and tenderness that lay beneath the surface of their secret trysts. I recalled my own yearning for something real, something that would break the monotony of my everyday life. The spark I had long suppressed ignited into a flame, and soon, I found myself unable to resist the lure of their forbidden world. My first step into this treacherous terrain came unexpectedly. One night, after a long shift at the community center, I received a discreet message on my phone, a single, tantalizing line inviting me to a private meeting behind the museum. It was unsigned, yet I knew in my heart that it was Jeff reaching out. The message promised an evening of truth and raw passion, a chance to cast aside all pretenses. I hesitated at first, fear and excitement warring within me. But the thought of finally tasting the forbidden, of stepping into a realm where secrets could be shared without judgment, proved irresistible. That evening, cloaked in uncertainty, I met Jeff near the rear entrance of the museum. The night was cool, and the air was thick with the scent of rain yet to fall. Our conversation was hushed, laden with confessions that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Jeff admitted that he had been living a double life, that his soul had been slowly suffocating under the weight of monotony and unspoken desires. His voice trembled as he confessed how each secret glance shared with Alfred rekindled a long-lost part of him, a part that longed for freedom and love beyond the confines of duty. In that moment, I saw not just a guarded man, but someone who was desperate to break free from the chains of convention. As if this revelation was not enough, Alfred soon became a part of this dangerous game. I was introduced to him in an unplanned encounter in a quiet cafe near the museum. His eyes held a depth of emotion that matched Jeff's, and his smile carried the promise of shared intimacy. The air around us was charged with a magnetic force as Alfred spoke softly of his past, of dreams deferred and moments wasted in silence. His vulnerability made me feel less alone, and soon, I found myself opening up about my own hidden desires and the emptiness that had settled in my life. It was as if the three of us were bound by a secret language of passion and regret, each word unspoken carrying the weight of our collective longing. Our meetings became more frequent, and the boundaries between friendship and something far more intimate began to blur. I would join them in whispered conversations in hidden alcoves and darkened rooms, where the past was left behind and only desire remained. The heat of our forbidden encounters grew with every touch, a stolen kiss here, a lingering caress there, until it was impossible to deny that we were all complicit in a dangerous dance of passion and betrayal. Yet, amid the heady intoxication of our secret liaisons, doubt and fear crept in like shadows. I began to wonder if we were weaving a web of lies too intricate to escape. Could we continue to nurture this passion without shattering the lives we had built? Every whispered secret and every shared glance brought us closer to a precipice, one misstep away from the collapse of everything we held dear. One particularly charged night, as we lay together in the quiet of an abandoned gallery after another illicit meeting, Jeff's eyes held a storm of conflicting emotions. He looked at me, and I saw the pain of past regrets mirrored in his gaze. Alfred, ever the calm force, squeezed his hand as if to reassure him, and perhaps to remind us all that some desires, however dangerous, were worth the risk. But even in that moment of closeness, a lingering thought gnawed at me. The inevitable moment when reality would crash into our hidden world, and the lies we lived would no longer be enough to hold us together. As our passions grew hotter and our encounters more daring, I sensed that the calm before the storm was drawing to an end. The allure of forbidden love had brought us together, yet the stakes were rising with every secret meeting. We were all bound by our unfulfilled desires, yet the weight of our choices began to press upon us. I could only wonder if our hearts, aflame with longing and regret, would survive the inevitable reckoning, a reckoning that promised both ecstasy and heartache in equal measure. In that fragile balance between love and betrayal, passion and despair, I realized that our journey was just beginning. Every touch, every whispered confession, every shared moment was a step deeper into a maze from which there might be no escape. And as the embers of our hidden affair burned ever brighter, the question that haunted us all was whether the fire of desire could cleanse our souls or simply set our lives ablaze. The delicate veil of secrecy that had shielded our affair began to fray, and I could feel the weight of inevitable reckoning closing in on us. One fateful evening, as the museum's corridors lay shrouded in a haunting silence, the hidden truths that we had so desperately guarded erupted into a crisis that none of we all could escape. It started with an unexpected knock on the back door of the community center where I worked. My heart hammered in my chest as I opened it, only to find Gladys standing there. Once the picture of grace and composure, her eyes now burned with suspicion and hurt. I could see the realization dawning in her expression, a realization that the life we had known was nothing more than a fragile illusion. With trembling words, she questioned me, hinting that whispers of infidelity had begun to circulate among those who knew her. I felt trapped, caught between the safe life I had always known and the dangerous, all-consuming passion that had taken hold of my heart. Later that night, unable to shake the dread of what was coming, I met Jeff in a secluded corner behind the museum. His normally calm eyes were now stormy, burdened by the gravity of secrets laid bare. "Crystal," he murmured, his voice rough with unspoken regret, "I never imagined that the truth would come crashing down on us like this." There was a raw vulnerability in his tone that made my own heart ache. I reached out, longing to comfort him, but even that simple touch seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 broken promises. Before we could gather our thoughts, Alfred appeared from the shadows, his presence a silent reminder that we were all inextricably bound together by our choices. His gaze shifted between Jeff and me, filled with both defiance and sorrow. "We can't run from what's coming," Alfred said softly, his words echoing the fear that we all felt. His confession brought forth a rush of memories, the stolen kisses, whispered secrets, and the moments of bliss we had shared in a world that was separate from everything we knew. Yet, as much as those moments filled our hearts with warmth, they were now the spark that threatened to ignite a conflagration of consequences. In the following days, the collision of our hidden world with reality became unavoidable. Gladys, determined to uncover the truth, began piecing together fragments of conversations and peculiar behaviors. The community center buzzed with gossip, and the museum's hallowed halls no longer provided a safe refuge, but served as a constant reminder of the lives we had chosen to lead. Every glance from a coworker, every hushed whisper in the hall, stoked the flames of anxiety. I felt as though I were teetering on the edge of a precipice, each moment bringing me closer to an inevitable fall. One chilly afternoon, as autumn gave way to a bitter winter, the tension reached its peak. Jeff, Alfred, and I found ourselves cornered in a cramped room backstage during a private museum event. The atmosphere was thick with apprehension. Every second was a battle between the desire to hold onto our secret and the need to face the truth head-on. With no more safe spaces to hide our identities, emotions spilled over. Jeff's voice cracked as he admitted, "I thought I could live a double life without hurting anyone. But now, everything is crashing down. I'm so tired of living a lie." His words, so heavy with regret, reverberated in the small space, leaving no room for denial. Alfred, ever the quiet soul who had long carried the burden of his hidden dreams, added his own confession. "I have always craved a freedom that society refused me," he said, his eyes pleading for understanding. But with every secret, I felt the walls closing in tighter around us. The room was filled with a clash of vulnerability and raw emotion, a cacophony of truths that threatened to shatter the remaining semblance of stability. Caught in the midst of this tumult, I struggled with my own feelings. Torn between the need to preserve what little remained of the life I once knew and the overwhelming desire to embrace the wild, dangerous love we had cultivated, I could feel the lines between right and wrong blurring into insignificance. In that moment, it became painfully clear that there was no simple escape from the consequences of our actions. The three of us were bound together by the choices we made, choices that now demanded reckoning. Outside, the storm raged as if reflecting our inner turmoil. The wind howled and the rain pounded against the windows, echoing the chaos inside us. I looked into the eyes of Jeff and Alfred, each pair telling a story of lost dreams, deep regrets, and an unquenchable yearning for something more. Their silent communication, the way their eyes spoke of shared pain and desire, underscored the truth that our lives were no longer our own. In that charged moment, as we faced the inevitable fallout, I realized that our secret passion was no longer a refuge, but a battleground. The lies we had spun were unraveling, and the confrontation with reality was as harsh as it was unavoidable. Would our love, built on stolen moments and whispered confessions, be strong enough to survive the storm, or were we destined to be swept away by the relentless force of truth? The future loomed uncertain and dark, and as I clung to the fragile hope that somehow we might find a way to rebuild our shattered lives, I knew that the coming days would force us to confront the deepest parts of our souls. With every heartbeat, the crisis deepened, setting the stage for a confrontation that promised to change us forever. In the weeks that followed the explosive confrontation, life as we knew it splintered into fragments of regret, reflection, and unexpected clarity. The secret world we had built, one of hidden glances, whispered confessions, and illicit meetings, began to crumble under the weight of truth. I, Crystal, found myself standing amid the ruins of a passion that had promised freedom but left scars too deep to ignore. The fallout was painful and far-reaching. For Jeff, the museum guard whose heart had been torn between duty and desire, the collapse of his double life brought him face to face with the consequences of years spent denying his true self. I still remember the long, sleepless nights when he stared blankly at the museum's ancient walls, trying to find solace in memories of a simpler time when love was uncomplicated and his world remained untainted by betrayal. His eyes, once vibrant with forbidden joy, now held the sorrow of a man forced to reckon with choices that had shattered his carefully constructed existence. Alfred, ever the silent dreamer, suffered his own form of heartbreak. His confession in that cramped backstage room had been a desperate bid for liberation, a cry for the freedom to live openly and love without fear. But as the scandal seeped into every corner of our lives, the cost of his hidden rebellion became painfully apparent. I saw him walking the museum corridors with his shoulders slumped, as if the burden of a secret had become too heavy to bear. The man who once wore his quiet intensity like a badge of honor was now haunted by the ghosts of opportunities lost and a future forever tainted by regret. And then there was me, caught in the crossfire of two lives colliding, my own identity fractured by the intensity of a passion that had promised escape from the mundane. In the silence of my small apartment, I began to piece together the remnants of who I had been before the affair, someone who had cherished the stability of routine but longed for something more. The thrill of our clandestine meetings, once a balm to my weary soul, now left me with a gnawing emptiness. I questioned whether the price of our forbidden love was worth the sacrifices we had all made. As the scandal spread through our community like wildfire, the judgments and whispers became inescapable. Friends I once trusted turned cold, and the familiar faces at the community center wore expressions of pity and disdain. Gladys, whose once gentle presence had given Jeff comfort and structure, now confronted him with a mixture of anger and sorrow. Their interactions, once a quiet symphony of shared years, devolved into bitter exchanges that left no room for forgiveness. Watching them, I realized that our choices had not only reshaped our individual lives but had also rippled outwards, affecting everyone in our orbit. Amid the chaos, I retreated into long walks along quiet streets, seeking solace in the simple rhythm of my steps. With each step, I tried to reconcile the vibrant passion that had ignited our secret world with the cold reality of its aftermath. I wrote letters I never sent, poured my heart into journals, and sometimes found refuge in the soft glow of the evening sun. In those moments, I understood that love, in all its messy, unpredictable glory, came at a steep price, a price that sometimes left you forever changed. Yet, even in the face of heartbreak, there was a strange beauty in the ruins of our past. I began to see that the tumultuous affair had forced us to confront parts of ourselves we had long buried. It had stripped away the pretenses of normalcy and forced us to acknowledge that passion, no matter how forbidden, was a vital part of the human experience. The pain, the regret, and the bitter taste of betrayal were all reminders of how deeply we had loved, even if that love was marred by deception. In the aftermath, Jeff sought solace in solitude, retreating to the quiet corners of the museum where echoes of happier times lingered. Alfred, too, began a journey of self-discovery, determined to rebuild his life free from the shadows of secrecy. As for me, I took a long, hard look at my own reflection in the mirror, recognizing that the affair had irrevocably altered who I was. I had tasted a love that defied convention, one that burned fiercely and left behind a trail of embers that would never fully fade. Now, as I stand at this crossroads, the future remains uncertain. I have learned that passion can be as destructive as it is transformative, that the choices we make in the heat of desire can forever alter the tapestry of our lives. Yet, Despite the scars and the lingering pain, I hold onto the hope that out of the chaos, something true can emerge, a renewed understanding of love, identity, and the fragile nature of happiness. This journey has taught me that sometimes the only way to truly live is to embrace both the light and the dark within us. The echoes of our secret past will always remind me of what was lost, but they also serve as a testament to the undeniable power of desire and the resilience of the human spirit. If you found this story as compelling and emotional as I did living it, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps keep these stories alive and ensures that the voices of our hidden hearts continue to be heard.